Then Samuel took a stone and set it up between Mizpah and Shem. He named it Ebenezer, saying, "Thus far has the Lord helped us." The year 1969 is remembered by many people in our world as the year when man first landed on the moon. But we as a church remember 1969 for another reason, and that is because that is the year when God in his goodness began a work here in Bangor that would become Ebenezer Evangelical Church. Some students who had come to Bangor over the years had struggled to find a spiritual home here within the city. They had struggled to find somewhere where they could be taught regularly from the Word of God and enjoy fellowship with like-minded Christians. And so it was for that reason in the year 1969 that some of those Christian students decided to start meeting together. They did so to break bread and also to study the scriptures. It is in this small terraced house here in Kaiklepa, just behind the High Street, that those early meetings began. This was the home of Hugh Michael and David Norbury while they were students here in Bangor.
So I remember Guru Raj and from Buk Singh's churches in India and Hugh saying we need to start a service. Since they were starting it in the flat that I was living with Hugh in, I had not much choice really. And since we had Guru Raj for lunch every Sunday, that's where we had it.
It was a very open forum meeting. I suppose the nearest you get to describe it would be like a brethren meeting. But it wasn't affiliated to any brethren group, nor was it called that. But it was just a meeting that was led by the Holy Spirit and inspired by the Spirit, so that each person would contribute what they could, and when we'd all given what we had, we finished, and that was it. Except for the breaking of bread, we finished with the communion.
The origins of the Welsh work here in Bangor go back to this house down near the pier called Greenbank.
And then we met up with the Welsh side who'd started at the same time, under Geraint really. He'd come to work in the insurance shop, as I understand it, in the middle of Bangor.
Marky and I had been in Colwyn Bay running a children's home for a year, and we just had our first daughter, and we'd moved back to the Bangor area. We were living actually in Gerland near Bethesda, and we'd moved at the beginning of September, and we'd been around getting into contact again with folks. We heard that something was starting on a Sunday in Barry Griffith's house near the pier, and I think it was probably about the second Sunday that something had been going, and we joined in. Then we heard that something else was going on in Kaiklepa, and that the same Sunday the Welsh group had started. This is how I remember it, and we felt that right from the start, well, this ridiculous to have two things starting. So we started talking to each other. Students, most of us postgraduate students, we were in our early 20s, and it was an exciting time, and we did all sorts of amazing things, I think, underground. Why not have a bilingual work? and see whether we could actually establish something bilingual. And I think that was a feeling which was shared by Dave and Hugh and the few that were gathered with him. Jerry Griffiths, who became one of the initial elders of Ebenezer as well, who was doing research in mathematics, went on after that to become professor of mathematics in Loughborough. And we just felt we needed to talk to each other at least, and to begin to see whether we could start one work rather than two, but one work operating in two languages.
We'd filled the flat. We had people sitting on the stairs. We had people in the kitchen.
We were afraid we were making too much noise. But on the other hand, the lady next door was Mrs. Jones, and she was as deaf as a post. And the people next door, the other side, was another student house. So, in a way, we didn't really cause a problem with it, although we could have done in a residential terrace.
The newly established church began to grow as more and more believers were added to their number. From a small group of about half a dozen who met midweek in October 1969, that number had grown to around 20 by the end of the year. In addition to church services and midweek meetings, there was also an emphasis on evangelism.
And God was good to us, very good to us. We ran a few different meetings to try and draw people in, open airs. And the beach mission in Bentlock started, which again was nothing to do with me. It was to do with John Lowther, who's now down in Mid Wales, and Hugh. And I was there when it happened. And it's still going. In fact, it's one of the very best missions in terms of opportunity that Beach Mission has anywhere in the country. So God's been good to keep that going all these years. Someone came into the bookshop, the Christian bookshop in Bangor a few years ago, and they were asking after someone who had been at the open air. This guy had walked past the open air down by the pier, had said, and he heard about just God's love being spoken about and faith. We didn't know anything about this, but he says he came to faith.
From early on, a weekly discussion group consisting of core members of the fellowship had met together to steer the activities of the church and to plan the services. This group had also met regularly for theological discussion and could testify to there being great unity amongst them as a group. The discussion of theological issues had helped to clarify their thinking on a number of biblical doctrines. In order for the church to adopt a doctrinal basis, this core group had also worked its way through the Westminster Confession of Faith, line by line, paragraph by paragraph. A constitution then followed, and Bangor Evangelical Church was officially formed. Just down the road in Caiclepa was the Ebenezer Welsh Congregational Chapel, which had closed in 1967. The newly established church services had been somewhat cramped as a result of meeting in homes, and so they decided to commit this matter to prayer.
In the beginning of 1970, these folks from the Heath came up and who were concerned about us and went and offered £4,000 for the building, and we thought, oh, how nice of them, just going to buy a building for us like that. But when the offer was accepted, we realised that they weren't going to pay for it. We were actually going to pay for it.
Well, I don't think any of us had that sort of money just to fork out to buy the building, so I think we thought that perhaps the first step was to write to all the ex-students of the Christian Union, telling them what we were going to do and just asking were they interested in contributing. And I must admit, I don't think I had very much faith about that. I think I was a bit cynical about the whole business and didn't think much would come of it, but I was quite amazed that actually people did respond, and the amount that we received was just about the 4,000. I think it was a few pounds more or a few pounds less. I admit that was quite a lesson to me. I can remember it did make quite an impact on me.
Yes, it was not in great condition, so we decided we'd paint it and do it up. We had to do something to the stones at the top on the front. I can't even remember exactly what that was, but I think you've got pictures of people climbing all over the roof. I couldn't get away with that now.
Ebenezer Chapel was re-registered as a place of worship, paving the way for services to begin there from September 1970. A bilingual evangelistic newspaper called Open Door was distributed locally with the headline, What's Happened to Ebenezer, and raising the profile of the church. In February 1971, the reopening of Ebenezer Chapel made the front page of the Evangelical Times because it was a chapel which was bucking the trend in Wales, where chapels were closing at the rate of one a week. In 1971, the first elders were officially recognised by the church. As the church grew, people were converted and Christians were strengthened in the faith. Baptismal services were held on Bentlock Beach as those who showed their allegiance to the Lord Jesus Christ were baptised in the sea. Later baptisms were held in Penrach Chapel and then in the local swimming pool. During the early 1970s, large congregations gathered for bilingual preaching meetings by Dr. Martin Lloyd-Jones and the Reverend Vernon Hine. Following advice by Dr. Lloyd-Jones, the church were in a position in 1975 to invite their first minister.
I had to preach in Welsh for the very first time, and it's one thing to converse in Welsh, it's another thing to preach in Welsh publicly, especially if your preaching for 15 years has been in English and you've been reading mostly English books and using an English Bible. So I still have nightmares thinking about that first Welsh service I did. I can't even remember the text, but it's one of the shortest sermons I've ever preached and one of the shortest services. And I'm sure the Bangor people wondered what on earth they'd let me in for. But I remember Lloyd-Jones asking me how I got on, and I told him, he said, I won't imitate him, but my boy, he said, you tried, and you've got to develop your Welsh now, and you will make it. So he encouraged the Welsh side of it anyway. So when I arrived, I realised there were 14 members. One of them was disciplined, and those remaining were divided between mostly the Welsh side and 2 or 3 on the English side. So both congregations were very small without the students. Once the students were in residence, we had very big congregations on the English side because we'd have almost the entire Christian Union coming, over 100 students to both services. And the tradition was then morning and evening service, not just one service. And the Welsh students would come, if they weren't preaching, to the Sunday morning Welsh service. And we'd get as many as 40 to 50 in that Welsh congregation. So it was a very formative period for students, particularly. And sadly for me, locally, the church was known as a student church. And as I got involved locally, people admired, all those students who came to Ebenezer. It's a young people's church. And I just felt like crying because you can't build a church on students. But the need was to build up a local work, and that was a prayer that we prayed much for. And on the Welsh language side, that was more difficult because of the barriers against the gospel. And so I did start. I mean, door-to-door visitation had taken place before I got there. I developed it in a more organised way, in the sense we could go in the daytime, and I had a team of 3 or 4 people, and I used to enjoy visiting the council estates, and all I had to say at the doorstep usually was, in Welsh, I'm a minister of so-and-so, and immediately they'd ask me in, have a cup of tea, sit down. We've never had a minister here for years sitting down talking. So it was a good opportunity to share the gospel.
By the mid-1980s, Ebenezer Chapel was increasingly becoming a burden to the church, and new premises were needed.
It was very costly to maintain. We couldn't afford the repairs needed. We were spending thousands of pounds annually on the fabric, and we really wanted to be to be rid of it. And we were looking around. I remember going to one hotel in the high street and taking the deacons, or some of the deacons, with me, and I had a vision that could be a good place. And one of the deacons rightly said to me, "It's not a vision you need here, it's a hallucination." And he was right. He was right, and I've reminded him of that since then. But we were looking around, and in the Lord's providence, obviously St. Paul's became available.
The large St. Paul's Wesleyan Methodist Chapel was built in 1858 and demolished in 1958. At that time, the schoolroom was renovated to make it suitable for the continuing congregation of St. Paul's to meet by the installation of a pulpit and a platform and a communion rail. By the mid-1980s, the Wesleyan cause in St. Paul's had ceased, and so the building came up for sale. In 1985, St. Paul's schoolroom and grounds were purchased by the church. Ebenezer Chapel was sold to a local solicitor with certain covenants put in place restricting what the building could and could not be used for. But on moving from Caicleper to St. Paul's, the church agreed that the name Ebenezer should be retained. Ebenezer Evangelical Church began meeting for services in the new premises in St. Paul's on the 19th of May 1985. It was at this time that some of the Welsh-speaking members of the congregation who had been meeting for some time, they became independent from the church, and they established the Welsh-speaking Evangelical Church here in Bangor. The Reverend David Job was appointed as the minister of the church.
And I began to realise that my ministry was coming perhaps to a close in the format it was. The new college in Bridgend had been established, formally anyway, not opened, and they needed a principal.
Dr. Davis at that point left the church to take up a position as the principal of the newly formed Evangelical Theological College of Wales, which then was going to meet in Bridgend. And then we were at that stage of looking for a minister. And although we had considered others, Geraint's name came to the fore. And he had been invited to preach. Now I do remember that he came for the first time to preach, in my experience, on the 17th of November 1985. And he preached in the morning, and he preached on a passage of James chapter 1 verses 1 to 8 on the need for wisdom. And it was an excellent sermon, and many people commented on that. It was a real help and a real blessing. Well, it wasn't long before after that Geraint came to speak to us again, this time on the 5th of January 1986, where he preached on the subject of guidance, which again was quite opportune. So after this, conversations took place, and in the end decisions were made amongst the church officers to call Geraint to be our next pastor. Well, that began a long association there amongst us as church officers. Many things took place during Geraint's tenure as the minister of the church. Some of the more interesting highlights perhaps were the Faith for Today meetings, which Dr. Davis had started, and then they continued. We would have these large meetings in Theatre Gwynedd, having leafleted round the area, producing the booklet Faith for Today, which included testimonies both in English and in Welsh from our sister church, Capel y Ffynnon. Geraint concluded his ministry on September the 10th, 1995. That was his last Sunday of preaching. And on that occasion I can remember praying in the service for him and Edwin. I'm pleased to say that even after Geraint stepped down from the ministry, and they kept, Geraint and Edwin continued in fellowship with us because they felt that Ebenezer was their home church. They were part and parcel of the fellowship and they didn't want to move anywhere else.
The church officers were asking people to come and preach for a Sunday, but they saw the summer months coming and knew how difficult it would be to get visiting preachers during July and August. And so they came up with the idea of contacting Errol at the college to see if he knew of a student who would benefit from 2 months experience in Bangor over the summer months. Kyungju and I were living in Cardiff at that time, and Errol approached us to see if we wanted to go to Bangor for 2 months during the summer. He told us it was a beautiful place and we would thoroughly enjoy 2 months working up there for Ebenezer. And so we came up over the Easter holidays. We came up to meet the church and to discuss the possibility of working during those 2 summer months. But it was made clear to us by the church officers that it would be for 2 months and 2 months only. We did various things. I preached a number of, not every Sunday, but a number of the Sundays during July and August. We visited people in the church. I took some of the midweek prayer meetings, and towards the end of the 2 months there was a holiday Bible club organised, which we helped to run. So, although we had been told in no uncertain terms that it was for 2 months and 2 months only, towards the end of our time here in Bangor, during that summer, the church officers did approach us and asked whether we would consider returning on a more permanent basis. And so we went back home at the end of August, back to Cardiff, and it was the following March that we moved up here, and I commenced ministry here the first Sunday in April 1997.
It is an awesome experience to witness God's calling of a man into the Christian ministry. And so, with a due sense of the solemnity of the occasion, we ask you, David, to answer the following questions in the presence of God and this congregation. Do you accept the divine inspiration of the Holy Scriptures, infallible and inerrant as originally given, and their supreme authority in all matters of faith and conduct?
I do.
Do you accept that the Bible reveals God to be a trinity of persons, Father, Son, and Holy Spirit, in perfect unity and without confusion of persons?
I do.
Do you accept that redemption from the guilt, penalty, and power of sin was only to be obtained through the sacrificial and atoning death, once and for all time, of our representative and substitute, Jesus Christ, the only mediator between God and man?
I do.
Jesus said, "Therefore go and make disciples of all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father and of the Son and of the Holy Spirit, teaching them to obey everything I've commanded you, and surely I will be with you always to the end of the age."
In September 2009, Ebenezer celebrated its 40th anniversary. Some of the founding members came, travelled to North Wales and contributed to those celebrations. Members of the original Ebenezer Evangelical Church, who lived in Bangor and the outlying districts, were also present. Some of them today have gone to glory. And then friends and supporters of the work from throughout North Wales came together in order to give God the glory and to rejoice in what he had done through the work here in Ebenezer. As the psalmist says, "Not to us, O Lord, not to us, but to thy name be the glory, because of your love and faithfulness."
In some ways, the situation here in Ebenezer is quite different from what would be the case in many churches. And the reason I say that is because the Sunday congregations throughout the year tend to be considerably bigger than the church is. And the reason for that is that during term times we have a number of students who meet with us, and then the students leave, but then the holidaymakers come. And some of our biggest congregations are during July and August, and then the holidaymakers leave and the students come back. And so it's really only round about Christmas and New Year that you see the church as it really is in one sense. And so there is this constant changing, constant coming and going of the congregation. And in some ways that makes it very refreshing. Both the students and the holidaymakers are a great encouragement to us, a great blessing to us, and we really do appreciate them being with us. But at the same time, we have to remember that we cannot build a local church on the basis of students and holidaymakers. They are both temporary, and so the ongoing work, as it were, is seeking to reach out with the gospel and to build up a local congregation. Now, in some places, a student work would lead into that and would feed into a local congregation. So, for example, before coming here, I spent a year and a half in Cardiff, and we attended the Heath Evangelical Church, and as I spoke to a number of men there, I discovered that they weren't from Cardiff originally. They had come to Cardiff to study at the university. They liked the city, they loved the church, they met a wife there, and they've been there ever since, thoroughly involved in the work of the church. That would happen in a lot of university places, but that doesn't happen here, simply because there is very little employment. And so over the 22 years that Kyung-Ju and I have been here, although there have been many students who have passed through the church, up until now there is only one who has been able to stay on long term. Another aspect of feature of the work here in Ebenezer is the fact that we are situated within a rural context, and that inevitably means that there are people who travel from quite a distance, and so we have a number of people who travel into Ebenezer from Anglesey, various parts of Anglesey. We have people who come from Carnarvon and further beyond in that direction. And one of the things we've done over the past 20 years is that rather than have a single centralised prayer meeting and Bible study here in Ebenezer to help and encourage those who come from a distance, we have tended during term time, not during holiday time, but during term time, we've broken up into various groups. And so there would be a group on a Tuesday night, there would be a group here who meets in the church, either for prayer or Bible study, and at the same time there would be a group that meets in a home on Anglesey. And then more recently we've also introduced a group down in the Clovelly area. And still more recently than that, over the past 6 months we have had a group meeting for Bible study on a Wednesday afternoon in Bentley. And this is a great encouragement because it means that in addition to those who are here on a Sunday, it means that during the course of the week there are a considerable number of people who are meeting, including the ladies on a Thursday morning, who are meeting for Bible study and for prayer. And that is a great help and a great encouragement here in Ebenezer. Because as Paul makes it clear in Ephesians 4, in the life of the church, that the ministry of the word should not be seen as an end in itself, but rather as a means of preparing God's people for works of service. And Paul goes on later in that passage to speak of the church as a body where every part does its work. And one of the great encouragements here in Ebenezer is the number of people within the church who are actively involved in the life and work and witness of the church. And we are extremely grateful to God for all those who are actively involved in the work here. One of the other great encouragements over the past 4 or 5 years has been the market stall. And on a Friday, the high street is turned into a local market, and if you're able to put up a stall in front of any of the shops that are closed on the high street, which is quite a few, and so we have a little market stall that we take and put up first thing in the morning, and we're there till late afternoon. And that has provided a great opportunity of engaging with people, of letting people know about the church, and more importantly, of introducing them to the gospel. And we are there not to sell anything really, but we're there to engage in conversation with people and to provide free gospel literature. So that has been an encouragement. One of the challenges that we face, though, as we look forward, is the work amongst children and young people. And because of where we're situated within Bangor, right in the centre of the town, and within 3/4 of a mile radius, all the properties are either student accommodation or shops. There are no children or young people living within close vicinity of the church. And so children's work and youth work has increasingly proved a challenge. And so one of the concerns looking forward is that we are still able to reach the children and young people of this locality. There are, of course, other ways of doing that, and we are very grateful that over the last few years, with the help of JP Ernest, we've been able to go into the schools, a number of the schools each year, with a Bible exhibition. And in addition to that, JP would frequently visit some of the schools for a morning assembly. And so although we perhaps are not able to get the children to come here, and hear the gospel, we do have the opportunity of taking the gospel to them within the schools, and for that we are grateful. Another challenge looking forward is the work at Bentley. For the last 4 or so years we've been doing various evangelistic activities within the town. We started with a carol service 4 years ago, and we've continued each year with a carol service, a Good Friday service, a William Williams evening to celebrate the 300th anniversary of William Williams, and various other events over the last 3 or 4 years, including Sunday evening services with the beach team during the summer holidays. And that work has proved a challenge and also an encouragement. We've had some good responses, other times less so. But over this past 6 months, we've seen a group of about 8, 10 people from the locality who are keen to meet weekly for a Bible study in Bentley. And most of those would be believers, but some not having any strong church connections. And so we are praying and seeking God's help to know just what we should do next there in Bentley, because it would be great if there was a consistent, clear gospel testimony within the town of Bentley. And so as we look forward to the future, with all the various encouragements and challenges that the future might bring, then our prayer, and we would encourage you to pray with us, as Paul does in chapter 3 of his second letter to the Thessalonians. Finally, brothers, pray for us, that the message of the Lord may spread rapidly and be honoured, just as it was with you.
And so the work has gone on, and may God cause it to go on for His glory. We must remember it is His work, and to Him we give all the praise.
It is the Lord's doing. It is. Yeah. Amen.
1 Samuel 7 verse 12 reads, Then Samuel took a stone and set it up between Mizpah and Shem. He named it Ebenezer, saying, Thus far has the Lord helped us. And 50 years on from the beginnings of the church here, that would still be our testimony as a local congregation. 50 years on, and we would say on this anniversary, thus far has the Lord helped us.